Awesome. Again, welcome everybody to the Digital Inclusion 101 webinar. We are so happy that you're here. You're going to be joining us for the first DI 101 of the year. If you are looking for a place to learn more about digital inclusion essentials, as well as policy and additional resources to help you, whether it's your new job in this movement or you just want a refresher, then you are in the right place. We have just some housekeeping things. As you know, this webinar will be recorded. You will receive an email by the end of the day where you will get the webinar recording. We also put them on our YouTube page that you can access at any time. We also have a resource doc, which has all of the links that is shared during the presentation and much more. In the resource doc, you can also find the link to the presentation slides if that will help you follow along. And we will have a Q&A at the end. So if you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A chat. That is different from the regular chat. If you look at the toolbar at the bottom, the Q&A is differentiated by two different icons of like two chat bubble icons. So if you have any questions, please put them there. There is an anonymous feature, so take advantage of that if that makes you more comfortable. All right. So let's look at the agenda. Today, we're going to be talking about, what is NDIA? What do those letters stand for? We're diving into some key definitions about digital inclusion, and then we'll talk about what are some key barriers for why folks can get connected online and use the internet the way that they'd like. We'll dive into solutions. You're going to learn more about the Digital Navigator program, learn more about digital inclusion coalitions and policy that is relevant to your work. And then after that, we'll wrap it up by joining the NDIA community if you are not part of the community already, and then the Q&A section. Again, please put any and all of your questions in the Q&A chat. All right, so who is speaking and who will be teaching you today? I will introduce myself. I am Pamela, she, they. I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I lived in Chicago for a few years and lived outside of the Chicago suburbs after that. So I am the training and community engagement manager. I do these digital inclusion 101s with my other teammates, and I also help manage our wonderful, thriving community of over 1,500 affiliates. I'll pass it over to Lo to introduce themselves.
Hey y'all, I'm Lo Smith. I'm a senior programs manager with NDIA. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and I use they, them pronouns. And I will say, if you come see me in Philadelphia, I'm shorter than you'd expect. I'm going to hand it off to Sian.
Thanks, Lo. I'm Sian Tesfaye. I'm a senior research and policy manager at NDIA. I'm based in Washington, D.C., but also spend quite a bit of time in Virginia as well. And hope to see many of you at Net Inclusion.
Awesome, perfect. And next up, NDIA. So NDIA stands for National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and we advance digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. We are a nonprofit representing and serving more than 1,500 U.S. affiliates, almost 1,600, but not officially yet, including 27 tribal entities and organizations in all 50 states, including American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, for affordable broadband, access to devices, and digital skills training and support. Here at NDIA, we facilitate knowledge sharing forums such as community calls, working group meetings, and our popular NDIA listserv. And after learning from our community, we draw major themes from what we've heard, and then we align our advocacy efforts with that. Here is our resource page. If it's easier for you to scan the QR code to access it, you can go right ahead and scan it. If not, then the link to the resource document is in the chat, where you can also access the presentation slides and additional links that we will refer to throughout the presentation. All right, definitions. The first one, which you've all probably have heard of and probably what drove you to joining this movement, is the digital divide. It's that gap between those who have affordable access, skills, support, and that can effectively engage online, and then those who do not. So the digital divide also disproportionately affects those who are already impacted by oppressive systems like racism, classism, age discrimination, and much more, something that you've all probably seen in your work. Digital equity, we like to say that's the goal. So it's why we're doing the work that we do, so that everybody in our community can get online and use the internet in the way that they want to, without having to worry about things like if they can afford next month's internet bill, if their internet connection is stable, if the device that they have can connect to the internet, or if they have the skills that they need to navigate the internet safely and effectively. And so why digital equity? So when we use the word equity as opposed to equality, we're accurately acknowledging the systemic barriers that have to be addressed in order to achieve equity for all communities. And so on the left side, that's equality. There's 6 books distributed completely evenly. And then on the right side, there's still 6 books, and you can look at the 6 books as the different resources that are going to be distributed in a community. But they're distributed in a way so that everybody is starting at the same spot. And we have to acknowledge that there are different communities that are starting at a different spot or have different needs than others. And so if we're going to address everybody equally without acknowledging those systemic barriers or those unique barriers, then we're going to have pockets in our community that are not getting the adequate support and services they need to get online and use it effectively. And then lastly, it's digital inclusion. This is, the work that we're all doing. It's those activities that are necessary to achieve digital equity. So it's things like having access to reliable and affordable high-speed internet, access to affordable and appropriate devices, and providing digital skills training and support. So we'll go into detail in the next few slides of what that's going to look like. And when I was defining and describing what I do for work with my dad, and I'm sure you all kind of have that same experience too, where you're talking to people who aren't in the digital equity movement or isn't doing anything digital inclusion related, and they're like, what does that even mean? He didn't understand it even when I gave him this definition, but he had to recently renew what's going on with his insurance because my mom is no longer with him on his insurance. So in order to save $300, he just needed to go onto the software and just update some things so that it's just him on the policy. Well, his computer is really old. It's about 8 years old. And when we went to the portal, the HR portal, we put in the username, the credentials, it wasn't working. It would just show up as blank. And my dad wanted to give up. And this is why he kept dragging it for a long time, because the deadline was going to be that Monday. That happened Saturday. And so I was like, okay, let me help you. Let me figure this out. And I thought, you know what, let me just check on my laptop. Maybe there's something different that's going on here. And when I did, the page worked, the HR portal worked, and we were able to get him and update his policy. So now he saved $300. And so that alone allowed him to understand what it is that I do, that you need somebody who's going to be patient and guide you through this process. Also somebody, or even have the skills to know like, oh, maybe I should try a different browser, or maybe that device isn't working or outdated. I didn't even realize maybe it was a device that was outdated. I was just thinking about different solutions. But those are digital skills that I have because of working remotely and being comfortable around devices. And for him, he didn't know that. And he felt stupid and he felt ashamed. And he was so close to having to continue paying that $300 every month for the rest of the year. So that kind of gives you a personal story of how digital divide affects us. But I want to hear from all of you. So we're going to do a Jamboard activity. And for those who have not been using Jamboard before, here are some instructions. So in order to add a sticky note to the Jamboard, which is a virtual whiteboard, you will go to the left module, and then you'll click on the 4th icon, which is a sticky note, and then you can add as many as you want. So in the chat, there should be a link to the Jamboard activity. If you are not able to access, or you prefer to just type your answer on the chat, you can go ahead and do that, and we'll add that to the board. But I want you all to think and reflect on, how has the digital divide impacted your community? And community can mean a lot of things, right? It could be your physical location, your city, your state, your region, but it could also mean your ethnic and racial identity. It could be identity like being an immigrant or being part of the LGBTQ community. I want you to think about that, whether it's a personal story of how the digital divide has impacted you, or even what you've seen doing your work so far. And while you do that, I'm going to put the Jamboard screen up so we can see everyone's answers. For folks who are writing it, you can actually click on the sticky note, which is the fourth icon on the left module here. And so you can just click that. Something will pop up where you can type it if that will be easier for you. And we will just be moving along. I'll be moving these sticky notes. Somebody wrote, in Baltimore, we're experiencing digital redlining, and it means we have lower speeds and less ISP options. Okay, thank you for relating that to your community. Other folks have wrote exclusion from activities and experiences, right? Low data caps, this is a major barrier for people who do not have broadband at home. Somebody wrote lack of knowledge of how to stay safe online. So we're seeing that the ways that the digital divide has impacted your communities is that some don't have competition with ISPs, or that they're paying for higher internet for lower speeds. Some are saying that their community members are excluded from activities and experiences. When you think about, let's say, the LGBTQ community, right? You think about, using the internet to find those safe spaces, those pockets of community where you can locate and access and not feel alone about, or learn more about your identity, or seek help and questions, but also know where to go and where to not go. Those are some examples of how, if not having that access could impact somebody from that community. So we wrote barriers to access to education and employment. We will talk more about that in the digital skills section. All right. I see somebody wrote, we're community, we are less efficient, and it creates silos. It also gets us to be less compassionate as the work pace is fast, but when our customers need help, we are not customer centric. Exactly. Not having a high-speed internet, which means, not having that connection, which means that you're going to be responding to inquiries online or even customers online a lot slower, which makes working less efficient, but also might make that specific worker look like they're not doing their job, or not being a professional, but really it's other issues that they have no control over. Awesome. So I will stop sharing my screen, but please feel free to continue adding to it. And we will head back to the slides, and I will talk more about barriers that some of you have already discussed. All right, so here are some key barriers. A lot of them were already mentioned. So with broadband internet being unaffordable, also unreliable. So the internet can, go out, or the signal can cut off if the weather isn't going well. In Madison last week, we had a huge snowstorm, and it's been negatives for the past week after that. So that could affect people's ability to, connect online. And then also with devices. Devices are very expensive. People might not know that there are options where you can buy refurbished devices, or where to go to find credible places to get refurbished devices. Also, if their device is outdated, like what I shared earlier, then that's going to make what they need to do online even more of a hassle, or if they can't even do it at all. Another thing is that if they have a device, but it's not matching the needs of what they need it for. So let's say they have a Google Chromebook, but their work or their class requires them to use Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word or Adobe Photoshop. Those programs are not compatible. You can't download them on a Google Chromebook. Some folks might not know that. Another barrier are those limited digital skills, limited or if any at all. Also, fear and shame. There's a lot of assumptions that are made based on if somebody has access to a device or if they have access to high-speed internet, right? When I see a lot online of like, oh, is this person really struggling, or are they, are they homeless? Are they actually really struggling financially if they have an iPhone? And it's like, we don't make that assumption of, oh, are you struggling if you have, running water? You know what I mean? We don't make those type of assumptions on other essential things that we need in our life. So even just like as a culture, we're not understanding how essential digital equity is and inclusion is to just function now. All right, and so what are the solutions? These are definitely not the only solutions, but these are the ones that we're going to be highlighting today, and that is affordable broadband, appropriate devices, and digital skills trainings. I will pass it over to Lo.
Helps when I unmute myself before I talk. Thanks, Pamela. So yeah, let's get started by talking a little bit about affordable broadband, which is low cost and affordable broadband. And I always like to give an example of what we are saying when we say low cost and affordable. For a while, we used to say affordable broadband, but now we want to acknowledge that low cost is actually one of the bigger, better solutions. Affordable and low cost actually mean two different things. We can all agree on what something is when it's low cost. I always like to give the example of coffee because Pamela and I can and will be found at a local coffee shop during net inclusion and pretty much any time that we're working in person. We ran into each other in a coffee shop in DC one morning. It was excellent. But for us, what is an affordable coffee? Some days for us, an affordable coffee means that we are getting the quad shot. We are getting the oat milk. We are getting the extra syrup. We are doing the full bougie coffee because for us, in our budget, in our day, that's what's affordable. We are going for it. For some of our friends, some mornings for me, even an affordable coffee is a small black coffee. I may have already gone hard on everything else I needed to do that month, and I am going as affordable as possible for me. But we can both agree what a low cost coffee would be. And that's when, we're traveling for work, we're on that per diem, and we want to make sure that we are going to get a low cost coffee. That's when we'll go for a really simple, low cost. We're both going to get that small black coffee every morning. So affordable is relative. It depends on your preferences, your needs, your budgets. But low cost, it's going to be the same for everyone. I always like to explain that a little bit because we're growing in our definitions and it can get confusing. So let's think about what broadband actually is. Next slide. So broadband, when we talk about it, and I know we talk about so many different things about internet, we're going to say like high speed, wireline, Wi-Fi over time. Let's think about broadband. That's just simply the transmission of wide bandwidth data over a high speed internet connection. There are a lot of ways that can happen. But we like to talk about broadband because it's the way that we can include the most folks. Way back in 2015, the FCC defined the minimum speeds for broadband as 25 megabits per second for downloading and 3 megabits per second for uploading. For some context, in 2015, the blockbuster movies we were going to watch at theaters were The Hunger Games: Mockingjay and 50 Shades of Grey. So that is how long ago these speeds were determined. The good thing is it looks like there are going to be updates to those speeds from the FCC, and we will be seeing ideally high-speed internet redefined for the modern world. Because I can guarantee you that none of you would be here with us right now if you were operating on 25.3. I don't even think your Zoom would fully function. So let's think a little bit about broadband adoption. Next slide. Broadband adoption is a term that we use basically to describe daily access to the internet, but specifically not just daily access to the internet, the speed, the quality, and the capacity to do the things that we need to do. For anyone who has ever heard the phrase, never marry someone unless you've seen them use a low-speed internet connection, it's probably one of my favorite pieces of advice out there. You know just how frustrating it is and how emotionally just grating it can feel to have a low-speed internet connection, to not have the quality, the speed, or the capacity to do the bare minimum. It also means that you've got to have the digital skills to participate online. Sure, many folks can technically get online at a speed that kind of would work for them, but if they don't know what to do once they get there, you're pretty much just wandering around the internet on your own, feeling lost. And most importantly, folks who actually need to engage in broadband adoption may not have a personal device that is secure and convenient to get on that network. It might look like a household where you just don't have enough devices for everyone to be able to check to see if they do have online class today, especially in an era, and like everyone else on the East Coast who got slammed with that snowstorm, and I guess also the Midwest, because Pamila's out there in Madison, and possibly the West Coast. So shout out to Portland. Y'all were not doing so hot this week either. Everybody, it seems like, went from doing our regular lives to suddenly back online. If you're in a household that has 2 devices for 5 family members, it can almost be impossible to get everything you need done. And thinking a little bit about where we're accessing our broadband, and I know I saw somebody mention ACP in the chat. I want to let you know that we will be talking about that later. So shout out to you, Penny. Thanks for that. We like to think about where we are getting our broadband from, and specifically thinking about the tribal sovereignty and broadband. Next slide. Our friends at ISLR published a case study on how tribes are actually expanding internet access specifically within their communities, but also to communities surrounding tribal land to make sure that there is internet access that is going to be useful, quality, at speed, and affordable within those communities. It also has the perks of not only serving folks right there, but it keeps the power and the data within tribal communities, builds that economic power, and also it's really helpful for everyone involved to be able to stay connected and communicating over time. On my next slide, I also want to share something that is particularly relevant these days as we think about and hear about ACP, especially as it comes to an end. Our free and low-cost internet plan page covers all of the different service providers that offer a free or low-cost internet plan. There are eligibility requirements and ones without requirements. So definitely take a look if you're looking for something that may be able to fill in for that ACP need in your area, or just looking for an internet service provider and wondering what they may have that would be useful for our affordable and low-cost plans. And now back to Pamela to talk about some other solutions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lo. So the next 2 things I'll be talking about will be devices and digital skills. So the first one, again, is the appropriate and affordable devices. So device ownership and access is essential for digital equity. Think about how crucial a device is for your day-to-day activities, whether it's work, whether it's being, relaxing and connecting with your family members. Ask yourself, can you do your job if you only had your smartphone? Or if your device isn't up to date, can you do what you have to do, whether it's, order Uber Eats or use your assistive device technology? So here is a chart. We actually partnered with AARP and again, ILSR. And if you click, the link is going to be in the chat as well as in the resource page that covers an additional device, which is the desktop. It talks about the different pros and cons of each. And it's really important for folks to know that so that people can put their money where they actually need it for. So mobile phones, they're great because they're portable, they're small, you don't really need a huge long cord to charge them, but it does not replace a laptop or working or studying remotely. With a tablet, it's great for entertainment, like watching Netflix or binging those type of shows. It's also great for accessibility. You have a bigger screen. You could also change the different languages and just have more access there. It's a longer battery, but you cannot make any calls without a cellular data plan. So there is that drawback there. And also with a laptop, if you're a community member, looking to work from home or are looking to have remote classes, then this is perfect and also kind of mandatory for some places. It has larger storage files, which is great. It does have a shorter battery life, and it is the least affordable out of those options. And these are just the common devices just to get started, right? Think about all the other devices you need to do your job or work from home, right? You need a second monitor. I know I do. I know a lot of other people do. Think about also a webcam or a microphone. Sometimes that webcam or microphone that comes with your laptop sucks, okay? Or you need it more elevated for the type of job you're doing. If you're doing a podcast, you don't want all that white noise in the background. Think about a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse or a trackpad. Like I need that for sure. I know other people really need that. It's easy. It's a lot easier to click through things if you have a mouse. Also other assistive devices like a noise canceling headphones to really focus, or earbuds if you're working at a coffee shop or working somewhere else or need to take a call, but you don't want the entire coffee shop to hear that conversation, as well as a portable charger so that when you are out and about or at a conference or outside, you can securely and confidently take that call knowing that you're not going to use up all of that battery juice. So those are all of, when thinking about devices, it's more than just these three that are on the screen. It's about all the other things that you need, even at desk, so that your computer can actually stand somewhere, right? That's part of having a device that's appropriate to connect, to effectively engage online. Here is a great example of one of our affiliates, Computer Reach. They're based out in Pittsburgh, and they help, they make technology affordable and available to people who need it through refurbished equipment, as well as providing computer skills and training support. And another affiliate that we like to highlight is Tech Goes Home. They also provide digital skills training, and they're based out in Massachusetts. And what's really great is that once a learner completes their program, they earn a Chromebook and 12 months of internet service. So on the right is a picture of a graduating class from a women encouraging empowerment program. And I just love that picture because it really just symbolizes what having digital skills and access to effectively engage online can look like. It can look like sovereignty. It can look like freedom. It can look like wide opportunities to start your business or learn or take that course that you need, or actually just even check your bank account, right? That can be freeing in and of itself because you don't have to worry about, am I getting an overdraft fee now? And then digital skills training. So we've got a question for you. And for those who are looking at these slides, don't give out the answer, but you can still participate. All right, so across industries, how many % of jobs require digital skills? You can answer in the chat or keep the answer to yourself. Is it A, 58%, B, 64%, C, 76%, or D, 92? We're seeing we're seeing a lot of more answers of 92% D, with a little sprinkle of B and C here. I think we all are agreeing that A is just not it. All right. In 3, 2, 1, I will be sharing the answer. And if you guess D, you're right. It is D, 92%. So the National Skills Coalition, another amazing organization and affiliate, they found that 92% of jobs require digital skills. And you can learn more about that in the report, Closing the Digital Skill Divide, which will be in the chat. So we know that there is an overwhelming demand for digital skills in the job market, and this demand it expands across all industries. So even for entry-level jobs that only require a high school diploma or 0 to 2 years of experience, they're still requiring essential digital skills in order for people to be competitive in that job market. And also the report indicates that nearly 1/3 of workers do not have foundational digital skills. So what are foundational digital skills? Well, here at NDIA, we recommend the Essential Digital Skills Framework. It's intended to support adults seeking to improve their digital skills. So it's things like knowing how to turn your device on and off, knowing how to check the battery of your device to see, I think I need to charge it now, or it's gonna die. Also knowing the different controls on your device, how to turn it off, how to increase and decrease the volume, how to, on top of just the device, it's also knowing how to open a browser and find websites and find information that you need safely and securely. Being able to look at your email and that spam folder, those links in there, we're not clicking that. But it's also knowing how to have an appropriate password, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we're not doing it anymore. We're leaving that behind, okay? So it's like knowing that there are also password managers that exist out there to help you protect your password and information online so you're not constantly having to remember it. So those are the type of foundational skills, and I encourage you all to check out that link because these are all skills on top of just like devices. They're also skills recommended for communication, and even relaxing. So I will pass it back to Lo to do. Oh wait, before I pass it to Lo, I will be talking about the Digital Connect initiative. So they're created by the Gila River Telecommunications, and they promote digital inclusion in the Gila River Indian community. So they have a digital navigator program, and so they provide digital skills training, such as digital skills focused on telehealth, how to access and download that app, how to navigate it. They also assist a digital transformation for veterans and serving military members. And then they also have that monthly skills training. And then we also have a really great resource written by Lo themselves. It's a digital skills curriculum post. So if you are looking to build a new digital skills curriculum, but even if you're not building one, you are a digital skills instructor and you want to look at different resources, this is a perfect blog post for you. It also talks about the different features that these skills programs have, like if they're multilingual, if they provide facilitator support and things like that. All right. Passing it back to Lo for the actual activity now.
All right, so we are back to the Jamboard, and don't worry, we'll drop the link in the chat again so you don't have to scroll up and find it. If you still got it open, head to the second page of our Jamboard because we want to know, how are people learning new digital skills in your community? And same thing with the Jamboard. Grab one of those Post-it notes, share out on your screen. Pamela is going to be sharing what the whole thing looks like. If you're unable to access the Jamboard because of your work restrictions or anything else, you're welcome to throw that in the chat, but we want to know. And it doesn't have to be something specific like a program or a resource. We just like to know, are folks teaching themselves? Are they all relying on that one neighbor who knows how to do everything? Is there that one person in town that everybody goes to when they need their questions answered? Are folks going to the library? Maybe our parks and rec centers are available to help us. But how are people in your community learning those digital skills? Oh man, I see it happening. We've got the library relying on school-age kids, libraries, community centers, and churches. Shout out to the YouTube, baby. That is, what if you didn't know how to use YouTube? I know that a lot of us love a good YouTube tutorial, which is fantastic. But I think we've got people who are learning how to use YouTube from the library and then heading to YouTube for whatever they need. The trial and error methods, self-learning, the method that I often like to call, like, can't really break it. Asking others, yeah, I do think the trial and error method and asking others are sort of two different areas on the spectrum of learning about whether or not you're going to be brave enough to say, hey, I need help with this, or if you're going to be able to just go, I'm going to just do my best. Children in school, librarians, one-on-one tech support from the city program, classes in a different city at their co-op, YouTube, etc. I want to know what city that is. I'd like to move there, or I'd like to bring those resources here. ESL folks relying on their children, yes. So I think a lot of us are noticing a little bit of a trend that looks like we are all relying on youth, on children, on experts, and particularly experts within our community. Any more that we want to add on to this Jamboard? Oh, we've got more. The Small Business Development Center. Oh, that's awesome. Workforce preparation and adult education programs, articles online. Yeah, so it looks like we are going a lot of places. We are asking a lot of folks, but we are also going to places that we didn't necessarily always associate with places we could learn digital skills. Particularly the library is now the center of a lot of digital skills programs. And often we are relying on folks that we believe can help us, often children, or just people around us. And sometimes that option for getting support is going to look like YouTube. I'm going to check the chat real quick. Teenage after school programs, we've got more about the YouTube tutorials and grandkids, relying on grandkids. There's a 4-H student tutoring, students tutoring seniors program in Idaho. And then sometimes people are able to learn those digital skills at work. Learning digital skills at work can be pretty hard because a lot of times people have the expectation that we know how to do a lot of stuff. For me, if I came in without knowing most of Google Suite, I think I would have really struggled. But a lot of the time, I can just ask Pamela when I accidentally mess up something in my Google Slides, and I'm like, I have broken everything. Please help. And they usually come to my rescue. So sometimes you need to have those foundational digital skills to even know what questions you're asking. I'm going to give this one more second before I really want to get into something that someone else said, which was that one-on-one support in their city, because that sounds a lot like a digital navigator program. So let's get into some digital navigators because I cannot be stopped from talking about them. So let's go. So digital navigators, I think we probably have all heard the term. It's everywhere, but if you haven't, no worries. I know we use a lot of different words for the folks who are out there providing the consistent, holistic, individualized support through repeat interactions. That's a very broad definition of what a digital navigator does. But yes, they are out here working on affordable broadband, connecting folks with that, getting folks the appropriate devices, and often providing those digital navigator digital skills interactions. And it looks like whoever put that on the Jamboard was talking about a digital navigator program. But digital navigators are everywhere within our communities, and they're out here providing the support that is really critical to our community members to learn and to grow. And on the next slide, I want to share an example of a really fantastic digital navigator program who I am always lucky enough to get to hang out with. Our Denver Public Library, they're an affiliate of NDIA, and I know we all said libraries over and over again on that Jamboard. Well, the Denver Public Library really takes that support to a new level. Their digital navigator program is out in the community, really providing the devices, the digital skills, the support. They're securing hotspots for Denver community members, and specifically, they are working with specialized support by peers of populations, including Spanish-speaking populations, unhoused folks, and community members with intellectual or developmental disabilities. These digital navigators are able to connect with their community members, provide the support that they need, and ensure that they're able to come back and ask for more. On the next slide, you can learn a little bit more about our digital navigator model and our programs. And specifically, if you're enjoying this 101 style webinar where you're just beginning to dip your toes into all of these different concepts, I will shamelessly plug my own Digital Navigator 101 webinar, where you can get a little bit more information on the Digital Navigator program, but you're not going to be completely overwhelmed and engulfed in details. My coworker Abby and I take you through everything that you need to know, and it's just under an hour. If you put it on 1.5 speed, you can just listen to the whole thing in like 30 minutes and download all that information straight to your brain. So take a look there and also look at some of our open source model. The Digital Navigator program was developed within the NDIA community, but we don't own it. We want everybody to use it. We've got examples of data collection methods, job descriptions, intake forms, and a Digital Navigator toolkit all on our webpage. Go take a look at it. And if you've got any questions, reach out and let us know. We love to talk about digital navigators. But back to Pamela to learn more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lo. So next up, we have digital inclusion coalitions. What are digital inclusion coalitions? Well, they are a collective of organizations, whether it's nonprofits, housing authorities. It could also be local government there. Some have ISPs there, kind of depending on the relationship with the community. And other are community programs, libraries, hospitals, higher education, things like that. And the role of coalitions and the benefits it brings to the coalition members and its community is many. They can raise funding for the digital inclusion programs in their community. It could also raise awareness about digital inequities that impact their community. They could also do data collection and having people do like a speed test to see what's really going on, as opposed to what ISPs are saying is going on in the community. And they also create a space for members to network with each other, with stakeholders, and then collaborate on doing events like an ACP outreach event alongside getting a refurbished device. And then on top of that, you also get a digital skills training program all within one event. And you can see with the map, which the map also is not fully up to date, but we do have all of the green are statewide coalitions, and then the red are local coalitions. So if you see one and you're near a red dot or you're in a green state and you want to get connected, reach out to us. You can reach out to me. I'll connect you with our coalitions team who can provide you more information. And here's a great example of what a coalition can do for their community. So this is the Bronx Digital Equity Coalition, again, another affiliate, and they were created during the beginning of the pandemic. They partnered with other community organizations like DreamYard and Here to Here. And what they did is they distributed 2,000 Chromebooks and also Wi-Fi hotspots to their students, which is really essential and really crucial, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. So this is an example of a great work that a coalition does for their community and how important it is for you to be involved, especially folks who are working directly with community members. You can bring that voice and advocate for what they actually need. In these coalitions. Here's also another example, the Digital Inclusion Network of Portland. Anyone who's part of that, go ahead and, a little shout out for you there. So that was created in June 2014. They also help guide the state's Digital Equity Action Plan, which helps the implementation efforts and community engagement opportunities for the state. A great resource here is our Digital Inclusion Trailblazers. So we just announced the 2023 winners of the Trailblazers. We announced 47 governments and municipalities and counties. So if you visit that page, you can learn more about each winner, but you can also find job descriptions, survey templates, and digital equity strategies, because all of them are a great example of what digital equity and inclusion programs can look like. So it's a great resource there for you to have. And I will pass it over to Sion to talk about policy.
Thank you, Pamela. So I'm going to talk about the policy developments over the past few years that's going to support much of the digital inclusion work that Pamela and Lo have been talking about in this 101. We'll start with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This included $65 billion in funding for both infrastructure and other digital inclusion activities. So the Digital Equity Act, you'll see at the top line, was a part of this, and it's really a culmination of many years of grassroots efforts to make digital equity a policy priority. And this funding is going to primarily support states in developing and implementing their Digital Equity Act plans. And I'll get into how that funding is divided in just a moment. But the important thing about the Digital Equity Act is that it really recognizes that certain populations have been historically disadvantaged because of the digital divide. So you'll see that state digital equity plans really give primacy to populations, for example, of people who are incarcerated, older adults, people who live in low-income households, people with language barriers, people who live in rural areas, and veterans, for example. So we're going to see an effort to really uplift those communities to make sure that we are targeting digital inclusion efforts towards those vulnerable populations. The Digital Equity Act also recognizes that there's going to be some unique barriers to some of these populations that have been disadvantaged by the digital divide. So Lo and Pamela talked about broadband availability and affordability, the need for devices and digital skills training. Those are all the kinds of things that are going to be supported with Digital Equity Act funding. You'll see the second bullet is the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. This is primarily funding for infrastructure to bring broadband to places where communities don't have it at all, or have it at those very, very low abysmal speeds that Lo discussed. There is the Affordable Connectivity Program, maybe the most popular item out of this that many of you are familiar with. Its predecessor was the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. Some of you may remember that was sort of passed at the peak of the pandemic. Congress recognizes that there probably needs to be a long-term solution for affordability outside of the context of just the pandemic. So there was $14.2 billion allotted for that. And the also included additional funding for the Tribal Connectivity Program. So this is funding for tribal governments and organizations for broadband deployment and adoption projects. And then there was a section on digital discrimination. So this is where Congress pretty openly acknowledged that we can do more to promote equal access to broadband, that there's been a problem with some communities not really getting adequate access, not just the physical access to broadband, but also I'll talk more about things like non-technical aspects like the quality of the service that they're getting, or their experiences with customer service or pricing, for example. And so Congress directed the Federal Communications Commission to establish rules to prevent and eliminate digital discrimination. And those rules have actually been released as of November of last year. So I'll get into a little bit more of the outcome of that rulemaking process. Next slide. Okay, so I talked about the Digital Equity Act and how that funding is that funding is going to be broken down in a few ways. We have 2 grant programs with 3 funding streams. If you look at the top, what flows through the states, states have gotten funding to plan to engage in the planning process to create their Digital Equity Act plans. We are going to be approaching very soon the next phase of that, which is the capacity grant program, where states will apply for funding to implement the plans that they spent last year creating. And then a little further down the road is the competitive grant program. And you'll see that little line goes directly to NTIA, because that's going to be an opportunity for state-based organizations, community-based organizations, for example, to apply directly to NTIA for funding for digital inclusion programs. Next slide. And this is just a little handy timeline to give you a visual of how the process has been unfolding. You'll see, like, the late fall of last year, having the states get in their plans to NTIA for review, shows you a little bit when we expect to see the funding windows open. This is our best estimates based on sort of what's in the law and how government agencies kind of work. So this is just a handy visual to give you an idea of when we can expect to see more announcements about these opportunities and when the deadlines for some things are. Next slide. So the Affordable Connectivity Program, hugely successful program, which probably attests to the need for affordable broadband. At this time, over 22 million households have eligible households have enrolled in the program, and it provides that up to a $30 benefit off the cost of households' internet bill. Unfortunately, we're getting to a point where we have to prepare for the possible end of ACP. You can go to the next slide. So at the moment, just so that you're all aware, if you're on the listserv, you may have seen us talk, you may have seen Amy talk at length about this, actually. There is a bill that is working its way through Congress right now that would, if passed, allot $7 billion in additional funding to the Affordable Connectivity Program, which would carry households through the end of 2024 if that funding were secured. But as the days go by, we are increasingly uncertain about what the outcome is going to be, and it's leaning to the likelihood that we really need to prepare households to transition off of ACP. So To that end, the FCC has released what's called the wind down guidance, which is just, it sort of gives more information about how the FCC is thinking about winding down this program, what the responsibilities of providers are going to be, responsibilities of consumers. So what do you need to know about this? Well, at the moment, the last fully funded month of the program is projected to be in April, end of April of 2024. After the FCC observes what the enrollment process is going to be like, and then in the coming weeks, they're going to issue maybe a more precise date. It could very well stay with April of 2024, but they are going to implement a freeze to the program, which is going to help them create more certainty about when the funds will actually be depleted. So that freeze is going to, the last day to enroll in ACP is going to be on February 7th. And then so the freeze will be effective starting on February 8th. So if there are people that want to get a few months off of their internet bill with the benefit, they need to know that, you know, the last day they can do that is February 7th. The ACP outreach grantees, so there are organizations that receive funding from the Federal Communication Commission to engage in outreach and enrollment activities to help raise awareness and get more people in the program. That is also going to wind down when the enrollment freeze takes place. And we expect to hear more from the FCC again about when they know with some greater certainty about the very last month that ACP will fully cover somebody's, or the last month that someone will be able to apply their ACP benefit to their plan. Next slide. Could you go back just one super quick? All right, you did that. Okay. Okay. Sorry, you can go back to the timeline. I thought this was the one that we skipped. Okay, this is also just a handy chart to give you a visual on the timeline. This is based on the information we have today, as of now, having read through the FCC's ACP wind down guidance. So there will be, and I'll talk about this in a second, a series of notifications that need to go out to households enrolled in ACP. And this gives a timeline of when we expect those notifications to go out, and when the projected last month of ACP will be. Next slide. Okay. I will talk briefly about digital discrimination. We can come back to the FCC wind down in just a moment. I mentioned that as a larger sort of policy project, Congress directed the FCC to implement rules to prevent and eliminate digital discrimination. These rules cover really any aspect of broadband service that keeps someone from receiving equal access to that service. So an example, as I mentioned before, it could happen in pricing. NDIA has done research where we found that some communities pay more for their internet service despite having to use older technology at slower speeds. It could manifest in customer service, right? And it can manifest in some of those technical aspects of broadband that include things like deployment or network and infrastructure upgrades. The really important takeaway from these rules is that the FCC is going to evaluate cases of digital discrimination, and they're not going to require intent to be a necessary element to find that digital discrimination has taken place. So the FCC is going to evaluate what the impact of communities, what has been the impact to communities based on some policy or practice. And importantly, individuals and communities will be able to file complaints with the FCC if they suspect that their community has been impacted by a discriminatory policy. But we've also encouraged the FCC, and the FCC has sort of heeded the advice to make sure that they're synthesizing all data from all avenues to try to discover patterns of discriminatory practices. Next slide. Okay, so broadband consumer labels. So some of you might have heard the other name for this, nutrition labels. And the thinking is, just as there are standards of identity for the food that we consume, there should be transparency in the kinds of broadband service people are signing up for. And importantly, transparency about how much they're going to end up paying for it. So the broadband consumer labels will go a long way in help addressing that. People should be able to see, the exact cost of what they'll be paying every month, and not be blindsided by having to pay more after an introductory period ends. If there is an introductory period, for example, like consumers paying a lower rate that will expire and then the price increases, that information is going to need to be much more prominent for consumers to be able to see when they're signing up, so they have a better idea of how much they're going to be paying for. But other quality of service metrics are also going to be more prominent for consumers when they're reading the label, so that they know if what they're signing up for is actually going to meet their needs. Next slide. Okay, so I went through a lot of information. I didn't even get as granular as I could, but we have a policy resource page. So if any of these topics are interest of you or your community, we welcome you to dig into them a little bit more, so you can find more information about the Digital Equity Act programs, ACP, which we keep updated pretty regularly, and we'll add more information about the wind down to it. So it's just like a one-stop page where you can stay updated on the policy developments as we learn them. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sion. I will be covering the last two things, and just a reminder that we do have a Q&A, so if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat. This is a friendly reminder to join the NDIA community. You are not alone in the work that you do. We often find that people who are like the only digital inclusion coordinator, program manager, or even specialist in their organization feel alone because nobody else is doing it with them, but you have this entire community here to back you up. We have 1,500 affiliates, and you can get connected with them through our very popular NDIA listserv, where you get access to people asking questions, resources, sharing research and tools. We also have monthly community calls where we have guest speakers that are sharing popular research that's coming out there and useful tools for you to use. And you also have access to our monthly listserv. And I also want to invite you all to Net Inclusion. Join us in Philadelphia on February 13th through 15th. It's our annual conference. This is a great place to meet community, connect with other people doing similar work, and we have really awesome panels talking about all aspects of digital inclusion. And if you're also new, I am going to be doing a Digital Inclusion Essentials panel and a Net Inclusion guide. So meet some friendly faces, meet other new folks who are a little bit nervous, don't know what's going on, but is very, very open to learn. This is a great place for you to meet community and make lasting friendships in this work, because we know it's important. All right. So up for the Q&A, we do have a question in the Q&A chat, and please feel free for folks to type it in. If you have any more, we have a few minutes here. So there's a question about what is NDIA's approach with working with vulnerable populations? And so when working with vulnerable populations, we recommend finding and connecting with those community leaders that exist in that community, right? Hire people from that lived experience. I like to say that people, you're gonna act differently when it's your house burning versus when it's somebody neighborhoods away, right? You know what those resources are that you need, you know how to get out, you have those strategies. So connect with those community leaders and connect with those individuals and hire them. Also, learn what the barriers exist for that community. So you can do this by going to where they are at, meeting them where they're at, making sure that your digital inclusion programs are accessible to that community. So that's like, is it in a safe neighborhood? Is it on a date that is not a religious holiday for that community? Seeing where those popular places that they're going to, connect to them there. And also finding out where they're learning those digital skills and finding out other programs that are serving that community. And that's a great way to learn more about them and be able to properly serve them. Also, pay them. If you are, getting a lot of their time and they're sitting their time with you filling out your survey, make sure you pay them. Pay is equity. And so make sure you pay them when they're sharing those lived experiences, and also connect with other programs that are serving that community. And you can, again, do that through NDIA. If you have a question about a specific community that you're serving and you want to know where to start, what are best practices, go ahead and ask that question to our listserv. We have over 3,000 practitioners there that can share resources and that are doing similar work than you. Awesome. We've got a minute left. So we do have our emails here. I want to thank my other presenters. Thank you so much, Lo and Sian, for doing another great DI 101. Thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, and also look forward to an email from me. I will be sending out the recording and the resources that we shared throughout the call. But thank you so much, and we wish you a good luck in your digital inclusion career and journey, and join us in Net Inclusion in Philadelphia next month. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.